This video is going to go over the mid-year review. When I have 2r to the power of 2, that means I will have 2r times 2r. That is equal to 4r squared over 2r to the 0 power times 3r to the third. So I'm going to rewrite my top. 2 times 3 is 6. R to the 0 and r to the third add up to r to the third, because 0 plus 3 is 3. 4 over 6 reduces to 2 over 3. The r's will cancel the 2 out, but because there were 3 on bottom, there will be 1 left over, which will be b. I have 3 times 3 is 9. P times p is p squared, because there's 2 of them. On the denominator, I would have 3 cubed. So 3 to the power of 3 is, I'll write that out actually, 3 to the power of 3, p to the power of 3 times 3, 3 cubed is 27, p to the 3 times 3 is 9. When I reduce my fraction, 3 goes into 9 3 times. Oh, 9 will go into 27 too. 9 goes into 9 once. 9 goes into 27 3 times. P squared, I can cross off 2, which means 9, 8. There would be 7 p's on the bottom. 1 over 3p to the 7th. Rewrite as exponential. So whenever I have a x to the b, the root goes on the bottom. The root goes on the bottom of the fraction. So I would have 2x with the 5 on the denominator. On this one, same thing, I'd have 4a. 2's the power, 3 goes on the root. Rewrite in radical form, so I'm just going to go backwards from that formula. I take the 2 and I put it on the root, p to the 5th. So p to the power of 5, that's the only one that matches. And the 2, I do not have to write a 2 on the root. On this example, I have 5m. On the root, I will have a 2, or I can leave it blank with the power of 3. Factor 530. I could take a 5 out, and they both have an x, which would leave me 1x plus 5 times 6 is 30, and I already have an x on it. If I wanted to check my work, I could distribute it in and make sure it matches my original. On example 8, I can take out a 4 and I can take out a p, which would leave p minus 7. If I check it, 4p squared minus 4 times 7 is 28 with 1p, and it matches my original, so I know my answer is correct. On example 9, they want me to factor it, so I am going to do my 2 sets of parentheses. V and V go in front. Multiples of 16 would be 8 times 2. To get negative 10, they would both have to be negatives. If I wanted to double check my work, I could distribute it. plus 16. When I combine those, they should give me negative 10, which is my original. So I know that that is my correct factors. On this one, I can take out a 6. So if I take out a 6 from every term, I would be left with x squared minus 5x plus 4. Then I could factor to x and x in the front, 4 times 1. And to get negative 5, I'd have to do both negatives. They add up to negative 5. To check my work, I can distribute. It matches my original, so I know that my factoring was done correctly. Solve each equation by factoring. My terms are not all on the same side, so I'm going to move this 3n over by adding it. That gives me n squared plus 3n minus 4 equals 0. Factoring, 4 times 1 is 4, and to get 3, I would have to do plus 4 minus 1 to get 3 in the middle. That means when I solve it, n equals negative 4. And then if you want to know how I got that, all I did is I took this factor and set it equal to 0. Get the n alone. So it's a positive 1. Over here I'd have to subtract 4, that's why it's a negative. So I will negative 4 and a positive 1 is B. Minus that 10r over. So I have r squared minus 10r plus 16 is 0. Factor r and r. 16 could be 4 times 4. That would only add up to 8. 2 times 8 would be 16. To get negative 10, they'd both be negatives. That works. Then to solve it, I get r equals a positive 2 and r equals a positive 8. 2 and 8. D. I need to add the 25 over. P squared minus 10p plus 25 equals 0. Factor. 5 times 5 is 25. If they're both negatives, they'll add up to negative 10. That means p equals 5 when I solve it. So I get positive 5. I'm just going to move these over with the m squared so I don't have a negative m squared. So plus 35 and minus 12m. M squared minus 12m plus 35 equals 0. That way my m squared is positive, so when I factor it, I don't have to take the GCF out. I can just write m times m. That would be 5 times 7, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. To get negative 12, they'd both be negatives. When I solve it, m would equal 5 to make that a 0, and m would equal m minus 7 would equal 7, so I would have 7 and 5. Solve each solution for the following equations. That's worded weird, so we're just trying to find solutions. To find the solutions, I'm going to factor it, and multiples of 35 would be 5 times 7. To get negative 12, we put both negatives. To solve, I find n and get it alone, which would be 5 and 7. If you want to, you could also do the quadratic formula on these, a, b, c, and you would still get 5 and 7. If I factor this one to solve for its solution, 5 times 3 gives me 15 when I add them up and put both plus signs. 5, 6, 7, 8. That means this k, when I solve, would be a -5, and this one would be a -3. Find the roots. Roots are the same thing as a solution, so when I look at this form, I remember I can factor it, or I can do the quadratic. You can pick. If I try and factor it, I get b times b for b squared. 6 times 6 is 36. To get -12, they'd both be negatives. This b would equal 6 when I find the root, or solve, and this b would also equal 6. N squared minus 1. There are a few ways you can do this one. If I factor it, I would get n times n for n squared, 1 times 1 to equal 1, and to get no term in the middle, I need a positive and a negative version of it, which would give me the root as -1 and a +1. Another way you could solve it is you could add 1 to the other side, square root it, and then you know that it's a positive or a -1. So you could pick. There are a bunch of ways you could solve these. We are going to find the zeros. Those are the x-intercepts. So zeros just mean I'm solving again. I'm going to have n times n for n squared. 2 times 3 is 6. To get a -1, I need my biggest number to be negative. Plus 2 would make it a -1. When I find the 0, that means that n will equal a -2, and n will equal a +3. X. 14 would be 2 times 7 to get a -5. -7 plus the 2 would give me -5. The zeros would be x equals -2 and x equals a +7 when I solve those. Simplify the expression. Be very careful and look in the center. It is a plus sign, so I will do 7 plus 6b. A positive will not change your sign, so it will be a +4 minus b. 6 minus 1 is 5. 7 plus 4 is 7, 8, 9, 10, 5b plus 11. Plus sign once again. 7x plus 1. The signs will not change. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 x's plus 8. 23, I have a negative sign. That will change my signs when I distribute it. 4n plus 5n to the 4th minus n to the 4th minus 2n cubed. So it changes them both to negatives. 5 minus 1 is 4n's. Then -2n cubed does not have a partner, and 4n does not have a match either. 4n to the 4th minus 2n cubed plus 4n. Negative sign will distribute and change my signs. 8x cubed minus 8 minus 4x cubed positive 2. 8x minus 4x is 4x cubed. -8 plus 2 is negative 6. Find each product. Product means we will be multiplying. 3 times 7 is 21 with x squared. 3 times 3 is a positive 9 with 1x, minus 21x minus 9. Combine your two middle terms. 21x minus 12x minus 9. 2 times 6 is 12n squared. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4 with an n. 2 times 6 is a positive 12 with an n. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. Combine those middle terms. 12n squared plus 8n minus 4. 6 times 4 is 24x squared. 6 times negative 3 is negative 18x. 6 times 4 is negative 24x. 6 times 3 is a positive. 6 times 3 is 18. 24x squared. Combine these together. 8 minus 12. 24x squared minus 42x plus 18. When I have a power of 2, that means I write it twice because of that negative sign in there. Can't just distribute it in. So I have x squared minus 1x minus 1x plus 1. X squared minus 2x plus 1. On this one, when we solve by taking the square root, I need to try and get m squared alone. I'm going to minus the 5. That'll give you 40. Divide by 10. M squared equals 4. I square root it. And you need to remember that it equals a plus or minus 2. I need a positive version and a negative version. I'm going to add 8, which would give me 8x squared equals negative 152. So I did negative 160 plus 8 is negative 152. Divide by 8. X squared equals negative 19. Square root it. So then I would have, because of that negative, it would be I square root 19. And the square root needs a plus or minus on it. So I need a positive version and a negative version. Here I'm going to minus 2. 2m squared equals negative 36. Divide by 2. M squared equals negative 18. Square root that. That would make an I. But notice 18 is not on here. It's because 18 will simplify to 2 times 9. The 3's are allowed to leave. So it would be a 3i with a 2 left over. So B, a positive version of a 3i root 2 and a negative version of 3i root 2. I'm going to try and get x squared alone. So I'm going to move that 3 over by subtracting 3. That gives us negative 8x squared equals negative 6, 5, 6, 8. Divide by negative 8. So we have negative 648 divided by negative 8. X squared equals 81. Square root that to get a positive or negative 9. When we need to solve the systems by graphing, you may make a table for both of these and then graph and see where they touch, or you can use the y-intercept version. So I start at -3 and then I go down 1 over 1 based off of the slope, and then I can mirror that slope back up. So that was my first graph. Then I start at +2 and I go down 6 over 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over 1. There's my second line. And they touch at 1 down 4. That's the point they touch at. 34, I need to graph both of these. You may make a table or use y-intercept. Up 1 over 1 for that slope. Then I match the pattern. Start at -2. Then I go down 2 over 1. Match it back up to see if they touch. Whoops, the line's a little messy. They touch right here at -2, up 2. On the next examples, they want us to graph. I went through and I already made tables by plugging in values to find what the graph would look like. So I want to find the correct sketch, identify the vertex, and the axis of symmetry. So I need a graph that has -6 up 3. This graph fits it. -5, 0, -4, -1. So D is my graph that matches my table I made. The vertex would be -4 down 1. And the axis of symmetry would be x equals -4. If you want the extra practice, you can go through and label these ones as well if you want to find vertex and axis of symmetry. I need 0 down 6. This graph works. 1, 0, 2 up 2, so it's graph C. My vertex is 2 up 2. And then my axis of symmetry is x equals 2. For 37, I need to find my matching graph. -6 up 5. Let's see, -5, 0. Uh-oh. -4 down 3. I might have done that table wrong. I'm going to check it. -6 squared plus 6 times -6 plus 5 is 5. -6 up 5. -5, 0. -4 down 3. -3. Here we go. -5, 0. -4 down 3. Okay, so it's graph C. X-intercepts would be -5, 0 and -1, 0. The y-intercept would be, see how it's not on the graph? I can come up here and look at my equation and know that it's 0, up 5 for my y-intercept. -3 up 3. -2, 0, -1, 1, 0, 0. There's our graph. x-intercepts would be -2, 0, and 0, 0. The y-intercept is on our graph at 0, 0, which makes sense because there's no number at the end, no constant, so that's why it's 0. 39, we have our table, -3 down 5, -2 down 3, -1, I'm going to check this one again too, just in case. -2, -3 squared, minus 8 times -3, minus 11. Left 3. -2. -2 down 3. So this one would work. -2 down 3. D is my answer. Identify where the graph is increasing and decreasing. I cut it in half, which goes through -2. It's increasing on this side and decreasing on the right. 40, 0, 4, 1, -2, 2, -4, 3, -2. Increasing and decreasing. I cut it in half, which is at 2. This section's decreasing from -infinity to 2. This section is increasing from 2 to positive. I find my graph, so over 1, up 5, 2 down 1, 3 down 3, 4 down 1. Identify where the graph is positive and negative. Well, it has two sections that are positive. I'm just going to put 2 and then 4 to infinity. And the negative section would be 2 to 4. On 42, I have to go left 4, up 1. So D's the one that works. I need positive and negative. This section's positive, that section's positive. So I'm going to say -infinity to -4, then 0 to infinity. That means my negative section will be -4 to 0. And I'm just estimating because they're decimals. I find my graph, +2 down 6, then 3 down 3, 4 down 2. This is my graph. Domain and range. My domain would be -infinity to +infinity because they continue on in both directions. My range would be -infinity because it's going down, and it stops at -2 for my range. 0, 4. It's the only graph with 0, 4 on my table. Domain and range, -infinity to +infinity. The range would be -4 to +infinity because it's opening up. That's +infinity. Last page is complex numbers. The square root of 81 is 9. Because it's a negative, I have to put an I on it. 16 square rooted is 4. 144 square root is 12, but it has to have an I on it. The negative distributed in will change the signs. So that'll become a plus 6. That'll become a plus 7i. Negative 3 plus 7, 7, 6, 5, 4i. 2 plus 6 is 8. And then I need to write them in the correct order. That was my bad. 8 plus 4i. Positive sign will not change those symbols. So I have 5 minus 7i minus 2 plus 8i. Negative 7 plus 8 is just a 1i. 5 minus 2 is 3. So on 49 and 50, when you multiply, 5 times 7 is negative 35 plus 40i minus 7i plus 8i squared. I squared cancels out and makes it a negative 8. So I have negative 35 minus 8 plus 30. Negative 14, and then minus 28i plus 12i plus 24i squared. Cross that off, make it a negative 24. Because of the I squared, it's negative 1. That makes negative 38 minus 16i. Quadratic formula. Over 2a. I need everything on the same side, so 2k squared plus 3k, I minus the 9 over. That gives me a, b, and c. Negative b plus or minus the square root, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I enter in, remember you can shortcut this, b squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 9. 81 square rooted is a 9. So I get negative 3 plus 9 is 6 over 4. Negative 3 minus 9 is a negative 12 over 4, which those reduce to 3 over 2 and negative 3. B. On 52, I need to move them over to the same side. So I'm going to do 3n squared plus 10n minus the 21 over a, b, c. b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Negative 10 plus or minus the square root. I do 10 squared minus 4 times 3 times negative 21 is 352. I'm going to square root 352. It's a decimal, so let's see. 6, we can reduce that. So 352 divided by, I'm going to look at my answers and see what they have. Maybe a 6. Nope, 6 doesn't go into it. Let's try 22. So when I simplify the square root, I get 22 times 16. That would be 4 times 4, so the 4 is allowed to leave. So I get negative 10 plus or minus 4 root 22 over 6. Those all can be cut in half, so I would get negative 5 plus or minus 2 root 22 over 3, which would match D. 53, I'm going to do f of x times g of x minus h of x. F of x is x squared plus 3x minus 4. I multiply it by g of x, and I subtract h of x. And then my goal is to simplify that. So if I distribute it, x cubed minus 3x squared minus 4x, that would become a negative x cubed and a positive 2x squared. Combine like terms. 1 minus 1 cancels out. Negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1x squared minus 4x. Let's see, x cubed, 3, oh, that's a positive. There we go. Positive 3x squared minus 4x. 3 plus 2 is 5x squared. There we go. And I need to check my work because on that one I accidentally didn't have one that matched. So we go through and check. 54, I have f of x multiplied by g of x plus h of x. Those I multiply in. And the plus 27's at the end. Combine like terms. 5, negative 5 plus 6 is 1x plus 17. 3x squared plus x plus 17 is C. If you have any questions, make sure you come see me.